Marvel Girl. Phoenix. Red. No matter what codename Jean Grey is going by, she's one of the most beloved and powerful X-Men in Marvel's mutant mythos. But she's also one of the most puzzling. Lucky for you, whether it's as an original X-Man, a cosmic force of nature, mother to time-traveling kids, or a time-traveling kid herself, we're here to tell you everything you need to know about Jean Grey. Jean Grey, a powerful telepath and telekinetic, debuted as Marvel Girl in X-Men 1 in 1963, alongside the other original X-Men, Iceman, Angel, Beast, and Cyclops. Stan Lee, who co-created the X-Men with Jack Kirby, has mentioned in interviews that when writing the early issues of X-Men, he would constantly forget Jean's name and powers. Which, we love Stan Lee, but come on, there were 6 characters in the book. For most of the original run of the series, she's kind of void of a personality, just there for the men on the team to pine over. The first X-Men series was canceled in 1970 until it was relaunched with an all-new team in 1975's giant-size X-Men 1. Jean took a sabbatical from the team, but the then new writer of the title, Chris Claremont, brought her back only to, seemingly, kill her in a spaceship crash. Here's what happened. Jean sacrificed her life by piloting a spacecraft the X-Men were in back to Earth, saving their lives in the process. Her teammates, having safely crashed into the ocean, feared Jean dead, but they were proven wrong when she burst out of the water in a new green and gold costume and declared herself the Phoenix. Jean said that while crashing, a cosmic entity called the Phoenix Force possessed her. While Jean's human side remained in control, eventually the Phoenix proved to be too much for Jean. This led to one of the most famous comic book stories of all time, the Dark Phoenix Saga. The story saw Mastermind and Emma Frost of the Hellfire Club toying with Jean's mind by implanting false memories. This psychic trauma shatters whatever control Jean had previously exerted over the Phoenix Force, and she goes full-blown nuts. Enter Dark Phoenix, who, by the way, got a wardrobe upgrade. Dark Phoenix flies off to deep space, where she devours a star, killing billions of people on a nearby planet. Professor X managed to get Jean, not Phoenix, back in control, but by that time Jean and the rest of the X-Men were arrested by the Shi'ar Imperial Guard for her mass genocide. While the X-Men battled with the Imperial Guard, Jean felt the Phoenix Force taking control again, so she sacrificed herself. So, Jean's dead. Everyone thinks she's dead, but she wasn't really dead. Well, she was sort of dead. Okay, here's the deal. 6 years later, the Fantastic Four found a strange cocoon in the ocean near the shuttle crash from which Phoenix emerged. Inside was a comatose Jean. It turns out the Jean possessed by the Phoenix wasn't actually Jean at all, but was the Phoenix Force, who just thought she was Jean, possessed by the Phoenix Force. You got that? Okay. Anyway, Phoenix had put Jean in the protective cocoon, and now Jean was back and awake. She rejoined all the original X-Men to form X-Factor. Here's where things get very Days of Our Mutant lives. So, while she was gone, her true love Cyclops hooked up with a lady that looked just like Jean, Madeline Pryor, and had a kid, Nathan. Cyclops basically abandoned Madeline to reunite with Jean, which we get true love isn't pretty, but did Psych need to be such a jerk? No. Turns out Madeline was a clone of Jean, created by glam albino Mr. Sinister. After getting corrupted by a demon, yes, and transforming Manhattan into a portal to Limbo, double yes, Madeline was defeated. Now Jean was free to be with Scott and a quasi-stepmom to baby Nathan. Scott asked Jean to marry him, but she said no because she was mostly freaked out by the presence of her daughter from another timeline, Rachel Summers. What is a daughter from another timeline, you ask? Well, it's a daughter from another timeline. In an alternate future, Jean and Scott had a baby, Rachel, who grew up in a post-apocalyptic wasteland where mutants were hunted. She traveled back in time, but to a different timeline, our timeline, where Jean was weirded out by her. She got over it, though, and Scott and Jean married. They spent their honeymoon as only X-Men can, in the far future. There, adopting the names Slim and Red, Scott and Jean raised Nathan, who had been sent there in hopes it would cure him of a deadly virus. Nathan grew up to be the gun and pouch enthusiast known as Cable, who will soon be played by Josh Brolin on the big screen. Upon returning to the present, she reclaimed the name Phoenix and had numerous adventures with the X-Men through the rest of the 90s. In the early 2000s, Scott started having a psychic affair with co-British diamond Emma Frost. Literally though, she is a cold British diamond, and she broke it off. Jean's connection to the Phoenix Forces began to reemerge during this time. Despite her immense power, she was killed by a mutant named Zorn. Because of her connection with the Force, her psychic essence ended up inhabiting a place called the White Hot Room. Think the hotel room at the end of 2001. She communicated with Scott psychically from there, making her peace with him and giving him and Emma her blessing, even though their behavior was kind of assholey. Shockingly, Jean's managed to stay dead. Mostly. You see, she's sort of still alive. In 2012, Adult Beast, one of the 5 original X-Men with Jean, plucked the 5 teenage X-Men from the past and brought them to the present. So teenage Jean Grey is alive and well. One who was never the Phoenix, or raised kids in the future, or is generally a messed up adult. Many of you probably know Jean from the big screen. The turn of the century saw Jean and her fellow X-Men make their debut on the silver screen in 20th Century Fox's X-Men. Jean Grey was played by Famke Janssen in the film, and she returned in the sequels X2 and X-Men The Last Stand in 2003 and 2006. The second and third films incorporated elements of the Phoenix Saga storyline, with Jean sacrificing herself at the end of X2 and returning in The Last Stand. A younger version of Jean Grey appeared in 2016's X-Men Apocalypse, played by Sophie Turner from Game of Thrones. This film is set in the 80s and takes place in an altered timeline from the original trilogy. Jean struggles with her abilities in the film, and it is hinted that she may have a connection to the Phoenix Force. And, of course, she's appeared in almost every X-Men cartoon, most notably in the early 90s X-Men series, where she was sort of a wimp and always getting knocked out. Also, much respect must be given to the Jean featured in the 1994 Sega Genesis X-Men game, where she'd show up only if you fell off a cliff. So, that's Jean Grey in a fairly large, slightly lengthy nutshell. Tell us your favorite Jean Grey story in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos.